And finally, we're live. You don't want to know what I went through. But even way back before 1983, when I first started with Dan Inasano, I was aware that Wing Chun Kung Fu played an integral part in the makeup of Jeet Kune. So when I went to California that first time, I planned to spend 1 week with Inasano because he was the guy that, as far as I knew, Bruce Lee had left in charge. And then I was going to spend a second week with Francis Fong, who happened to be the featured Wing Chun teacher at California Martial Arts Academy at camp that year. So I figured I would learn everything that I could, and then I would go back home and put it together for myself, just like Bruce Lee had done in creating Jeet Kune. Years later, the degree of Wing Chun's impact and influence on Jeet Kune is still a topic of much debate. Hello everyone, this is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Rebel, and welcome to the I Love Jeet Kune broadcast number 76. This is part 6 of Jeet Kune and its associated disciplines. So as you're logging in, I see Kevin Porter is here. As you guys are logging in, be kind enough to say where you're logging in from, and hit the like button and continue to do so if I say anything that you find particularly insightful. All right, somebody out there didn't want us to touch this controversial topic of Jeet Kune and Wing Chun, and so delayed my being able to get online with you guys. And as we speak, there is a raging discussion on the I Love Jeet Kune group page about another topic with which we have dealt before, and that is the whole thing about Jeet Kune as a style or a system, and whether it can be taught or standardized or what have you. So maybe we will have to revisit that at some point, but in the near future, right? But for today, we're talking about Wing Chun Kung Fu. So the debate on Wing Chun is definitely another one of those areas where there's much differing opinion on what went on in the past, what's going on currently, and perhaps even what should be going on. There's internet chatter, as they call it, about how good was Bruce Lee's Wing Chun. Would he have not had to create JKD if his Wing Chun was any good? How can you understand Jeet Kune if you don't understand or have any experience with its root system of Wing Chun, etc., etc. There are JKD people who are deeply invested and entrenched in their practice of Wing Chun, going so far as to have separate Wing Chun classes at their school, becoming members of a Wing Chun Instructors Association, requiring students to learn and practice the Wing Chun forms, and so on and so on. Right, so where to start looking at Wing Chun's association with Jeet Kune? We can start just about anywhere, right? But obviously, right, that's a good place to start is at the very beginning with the fact that, as is sometimes said, Bruce Lee's only formal martial art training was in Wing Chun with Yip Man, right? Except that that fact might not be so factual, because apparently it was actually his Wing Chun senior, his Sihing, Wong Shung Lung, who was assigned most of Bruce Lee's instruction in Hong Kong. Perhaps it was Wong on the physical aspects of Wing Chun, and then Grandmaster Yip Man providing guidance on maybe the psychological and the philosophical aspects of Wing Chun. And then for a time when he was in Seattle, apparently Bruce Lee continued his Wing Chun training with Fook Yung in the Red Boat method. And you know, but I was going to say something about history repeating itself, but we'll leave that for another time. So when we look at the first book, I don't have it here with me, but when we look at the Chinese Kung Fu, the philosophical art of self-defense, right on the cover, Bruce Lee adopts a Wing Chun position. So obviously when that book was published, Wing Chun was still a relevant part. And there are some pages in the technique pages of that book, you can see the remaining Wing Chun influence. When it comes to Oakland, we've read that in the famous fight with Wong Jack Man, from his post-fight analysis, Cedro Bruce determined that, as it says in Inosanto's book, his thick-headed adherence to the Wing Chun style of fighting was one of the contributing factors to the fight lasting longer than Bruce Lee thought it should have. And in that same era, there are the famous pictures. This was 1965 when Bruce Lee went back to Hong Kong. There are the famous pictures of Cedro Bruce and Yip Man doing. I think there was an intention to do some kind of Wing Chun instructional material, right? And by the time we get to Los Angeles, there's definitely still some Wing Chun influence there. If you've ever seen Black Belt magazine, they have a series of pictures with Daniel Lee and Bruce Lee, and so from those pictures you can still see some aspects of Wing Chun in there. When you take a look at the Fighting Method book, right? So when you take a look at this, Chapter 7, Skill in Hand Techniques, right? Page 138. There's still some Wing Chun looking stuff where they examine the benefits, let's say, of the straight punch, keeping the elbow in, and then there are some pictures of Chi Sao, and they do talk a little bit about the benefits of Chi Sao practice, right? When you look at pictures, so there's in the hundreds, there's like page 100, 115, 124. There are pictures of Bruce Lee training on the wooden dummy, on the Muk Jong. And you can see there are pictures of him doing what would be considered classical Wing Chun stuff, but then there are also pictures of him doing more functional or non-classical or practical maneuvers on the same wooden dummy, right? So it's a mix of classical and functional, right? But in the Fighting Method, there's no section on trapping hands, the trapping hands of Wing Chun or the trapping hands of Jeet Kune Do. There's nothing like the Pak Sao series or the Pin Choi series. So does that indicate that by this time, Bruce Lee was kind of veering away from the intricacies of things like Pak Sao, Lap Sao, Gua Choi in favor of something else? Perhaps paring down his Wing Chun to that which was simple and direct and effective, right? And might this veering away have started back? So I'll show you this, right? In Absorb What Is Useful, right? So this is pages 110 to 114. Let me see if I can show it to you, because I know some of you guys might not have this book, right? But it has a whole bunch of sequences on Dan Chi, single-handed Chi Sao, and Song Chi, the double-handed Chi Sao. And they make the point that one of Bruce Lee's first modifications to Dan Chi was, instead of the hand traditionally back here, he actually moved it to the guard position. And then in the double-handed Chi Sao, instead of standing square, the traditional Wing Chun way, they actually went to right and left leads. So there was stuff that was retained from the Wing Chun, but it was being influenced by other things, right? So my question is well, I won't ask you a question. Now, let me just make some more statements, and we'll do all the questioning in the comments, right? So, have you ever heard people talking about? I remember, I forget where I heard this, but there was this whole thing about Bruce Lee's second hand and third hand, and whether or not his second and third hand in Kung Fu was any effective. And then somebody was like, doesn't matter if Bruce Lee's second and third hands were effective, because nobody could touch him on the first hand, right? So, and maybe that idea of the first hand was one of the most important elements that Bruce Lee retained from the Wing Chun. The idea of hitting versus, let's say, the idea of having your punch blocked and then you have to trap it, and now you have to remove the barrier, so that they talk about the lead hand barrier, and you have to remove that, and then there's the rear hand barrier, so now you have to remove that again, right? Because in the Fighting Method book, this is the new edition, So you won't find this in the older edition, but in this, the complete edition, on page 343, where they talk about the five ways of attack. So they're talking about hand immobilization attack, and it is not at all what we are used to seeing. You know, the whole high outside reference point stuff, you know, and then you paksao guachoy and that stuff. That's not what's shown in the fighting method as HIA. Instead, it seems to be more along the lines of simultaneous parry and hit. So it's like capturing in flight. And so whether it's parrying and punching or parrying and kicking, it seems as if hand immobilization attack had been pared down to just that. The concept of simultaneous parry and hit, linsil daida, I think is what they call it, right? So that's the stuff that I wanted you to ponder, right? So here's some final thoughts also. In the Tao, right, that's not the Tao, Dwight. They're the same size, sorry. That's the Tao, right? Page 74 and 75. This is the chapter called Tools, right? In the section called Some Weapons from JKD. Go through that and see if you can determine what in that weapons from JKD is Wing Chun, what's derived from Wing Chun, and what's derived from other sources. Likewise, on page 23, in the facts of Jeet Kune, go through that list and see if you can determine what's derived from Wing Chun, what's derived from other places, right? Because these might be considered examples of Bruce Lee's hacking away at the unessentials of Wing Chun and absorbing what is useful, aka what is personally suitable, right, from other sources. I've heard it said in discussion that Bruce Lee's prowess in Wing Chun is due to the fact that that art is actually structured or taught backwards, right? And so that all the stuff that's useful for fighting is up front in Sunim Tao, in the early stages of the art. And that's interesting because perhaps that explains why somebody like Bruce Lee could become proficient in a short period of time, right, without having learned the whole system, right? Because we've heard it said that when he got to Seattle and he encountered, you know, like big Westerners, that was his initial impetus to start modifying the Wing Chun that he had learned and practiced in Hong Kong, right? And then in Oakland, when his primarily Wing Chun based fight approach with Wong Jack Man, when that proved relatively ineffectual, maybe that also laid the seeds for proficiency in all-out fighting with an emphasis on hitting more so than any of the convoluted trapping stuff or what have you, right? But we're not going to know unless we were there and unless we were privy to Bruce Lee's every thought. We're pretty much can only use what he left behind and examine that and draw our own conclusions. So we do know that ultimately he rejected the notion of style, right? In the commentaries book, page 53, right? He says, I have lost faith in the classical Chinese arts because basically all styles are product of dry land swimming is what he called it. He said even the Wing Chun school, right? So suffice to say that Wing Chun will never be completely divorced from Jeet Kune Do, or the other way around. Jeet Kune Do will never be completely divorced from Wing Chun, and I'm not advocating for that in any shape or form, right? Bruce Lee even put Wing Chun into the movies, right? There are scenes of combination trapping in Fist of Fury, in Way of the Dragon, and in Enter the Dragon. Probably the most popular is the Enter the Dragon stuff with Bob Wall, right? And you know, so that's in the movie. So there's Wing Chun trapping in the movies, right? And Paul Vunak recently said that in Asia, there's a section of people who believe that what they see on screen, what they see Bruce Lee doing on screen, that is what Jeet Kune Do is, right? So, you know, maybe that explains why the Wing Chun is still such a popular topic when it comes to Jeet Kune Do, right? And by the way, for those of you who might be thinking that Bruce Lee's Wing Chun really did suck, consider that none other than his primary source, Wong Sheng Lung, visited Bruce Lee on the set of Enter the Dragon and is reported to have remarked that Bruce Lee's Wing Chun was top notch, right? I think he was there because there was something about him possibly appearing in Game of Death or something like that, right? Okay, so that's what I wanted to put out there for you guys to consider. That's it for today. Feel free to share, like, and comment. Ask questions if you want. I'll go through everything after posting. I have told you that this whole associated discipline thing, I will be producing an informational video series on all that. So send me an email at jkdrebel at gmail.com so I can put you on the notification list for when that video series is available. Volume 1 of the Quick Skills series is still available at ilovejeetkundo.com. Sign up for notifications for when we go live here on Facebook and when we post the final edits on the YouTube. Follow me on Twitter at Dwight Woods, on Instagram at Dwight D. Woods. Today is a purple day, but I wanted to show you this shirt because I want to see who is really sharp. There's something very interesting about this photograph that they used on this shirt, right? So I wanted to give you an extended look at that. I'll do it again, right? And see if anybody's sharp enough to come up in the comments on this video as to what the heck might have been going on here, right? I'll be traveling this weekend, so there won't be Jeet Kune Do Dialogues on Friday, but we'll be back on schedule for next week. And we'll be back here next Wednesday for another issue of the I Love Jeet Kune Do broadcast. This is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Do Rebel, signing off. You guys enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.